Well, the weekend has certainly brought some interesting information to the fore, especially relating to this expropriation without compensation scenario that's unfolding in South Africa. It's not something that anybody's taken lightly, but the first and most interesting thing is that in all these meetings that have been held around the country for the public to make their representations regarding this new controversial expropriation without compensation policy being debated in Parliament. The most interesting thing that I've seen is that the same people pop up time and time and time again reading the same script at different venues, so far as that the guys holding the meeting are starting to roll their eyes back when they see the same person say the same thing again. Having reviewed a whole lot of these pieces of the footage, it's clear that most of the representations are based on emotion. A lot of the representations are just absolute nonsense. They're not in any way historically true. So we have that. You can't ignore that. But another interesting thing popped out, and I was made aware of this yesterday, is that the whole expropriation without compensation is a reaction to the opposite side of the spectrum, where there's been this whole white genocide process, and it's gone crazy on social media, and there's even been overseas South African expats mobilizing government departments, and there's stories about Russian farmers going to Russia, and there's stories about the Australian government making possible for farmers to go to Australia. The reality is, you can break it down to real nuts and bolts. If there were a white genocide going on in South Africa, we as white people would most certainly be going to funerals at least twice a week. That is how close the community in South Africa is. If people were being murdered flat out in a genocide, we would be going to funerals twice a week for people that were murdered. The last time I went to a funeral for somebody who was murdered was not even this century. It was in the 90s. Last century. It was 19 years ago, the last time I went to a funeral for somebody who was murdered. And I'm well connected in virtually every aspect of South African community. So the white genocide story is something that it's a thorn in the side of the current government, and it's quite possible. I mean, when I heard this theory yesterday, I thought, well, there's a possibility, because the representations made at the BRICS conference was that there won't be any land taken away from anybody. What I've also noticed is that public relations agencies are working flat out for their clients, producing stories. We've got all sorts of stories coming out in Mirrors and Smokescreens, which is such a typical South African story. When something big happens, the mirror and smokescreen machine that we have employed in South Africa, creating diversion, information, and distractions. That's par excellence. We have possibly the best public relations businesses in the world. And if you want to understand what public relations is, after World War II, they changed the word propaganda into public relations. And there we have it. Not an unusual thing in South Africa. I hope you guys have an awesome week this week.